Hello, let's continue working on the Shell Codecrafters project. So again, from first principles, what a shell is it's a wrapper around, so the way I think about shells is it's a wrapper around operating system calls uh, in order for a user to use the operating system easily. So when a user logs into the system, they don't need to write a program to do everything that they want to do. Instead, they can just use a program that processes their. It's an abstraction essentially over system calls. So when you start up your computer, you can open up your terminal, and that your terminal can run a shell process, and it can, for example, display your name, your username, and your computer's name. Again, all of this can be obtained by using system calls, and it can give you access to commands such as ls and other commands in the path environment variable, and so on. So that's what we're going to be implementing today. Just to remind myself of what exactly I'm building. So I'm building a shell, which is an abstraction over operating system calls. And it's uh, it can also be thought of as a programming language, uh, although it's not a very powerful one at that, in the sense that it's very different from conventional programming languages like Python. But I think, yeah, it's a programming language. I can program the computer using this language. So a shell is a language that I can use to talk to the computer with or to. So in this video, I'm going to be working on the auto-completion module of the Shell extension, of the Shell Codecrafters project. In the last video, we completed redirection, which was pretty interesting. And I think that auto-completion is going to be quite interesting too. And auto-completion makes a lot of sense to implement because I use auto-completion on my shell all the time. So whenever I use my computer, I use the terminal, and the terminal runs a shell process, and for example, if I wanted to read the README file, I say cat README, but very often I don't need to type the entire file name. I can just press tab and the shell completes it for me. So this is a kind of intelligence that one can program into the shell, and it's super interesting to work on. So of course there are many different ways in which autocomplete, there's many forms that autocomplete takes. So here we completed, the shell completed the file name, but it can also complete the command that you intend to type. So the first term that you pass to the shell is your command, and so if you type the first letter of your command and press tab, it shows you a list of all possible commands that you can possibly type. So this is another form of autocomplete. So file completion, command completion. Are there any other kinds of autocomplete? I don't think so. But yeah, autocomplete is a very neat feature, which the Unix the POSIX specification doesn't actually necessitate the implementations to, or POSIX compliant shells don't necessarily have to implement autocompletion. So I remember when I was on Linux and using Dash as, oh, we have Dash in Mac OS too. Okay. A tab is literally the tab character. It inputs space into the input area, which is interesting. Oh wow. Cool. So yeah, let's get started with implementing autocompletion for our shell. So right now when I press tab, interesting. So when I press tab, it literally tabs over to the next character. It inserts a physical tab, which is interesting. Yeah, this is interesting because just yesterday, I think when I pressed tab, it displayed weird characters, which I assume, and the term control characters comes to mind. You have the caret symbol, and we have square brackets left and right, and we have numbers, which represents the code for that character. So control A, for example, prints caret A. I'm not sure about what exactly those characters mean, but anyway, this is weird actually. I didn't expect I didn't expect a literal tab in the input prompt area when I pressed tab. So I think since we're getting input using the input function, I think this is how the input function processes tabs. But the input function waits for input before processing, waits for an enter before processing it. So I suppose the input function, yeah, the input function probably displays a tab when a user presses tab. Okay, let's open up our code. Input equals input. Oops. Wow. Okay. Yeah, this seems to have messed up spacing. Opening up another program within. Yeah, so I've run into this issue before, so I would actually like to know at some point what causes this issue. I've run into this issue multiple times, and it does pique my curiosity. Okay, so that's better. Let me close this tab. Interesting. So in the interactive terminal, when I press tab, it doesn't actually insert a literal tab character. Which is kind of interesting. Okay, there. That is very interesting. But why does it do so here? sys.stdout.write and then input. Yeah, so what am I trying to figure out here? I'm just trying to figure out how input works when the tab character is pressed. What am I going to do with that information? Well, if there's, okay, so what I need to do with that information, if there is a particular callback function that I can call, a callback function that I can set when the tab key is pressed, I'm gonna do that. So I need access to maybe a named argument that controls that behavior. But I think let's actually read the challenge first before proceeding. Built-in completion. In this stage, you'll implement support for auto-completing built-in commands. Okay. So we're auto-completing built-in commands first. That makes sense. Built-in commands don't require us to go through the paths and find all executable programs. Your shell should be able to complete built-in commands when the user presses the tab key. Specifically, you'll need to implement completion for the echo and exit built-ins. Tests. The tester will execute your program like this. It will then send the following input, simulating user input and tab presses. Input, ec. The tester expects the prompt to display echo after the tab press. Input, exit. The tester expects the prompt to display exit after the tab press. Cool. The tester checks if the completion works as expected and if your shell outputs the correct value for echo and exit command. Note the space at the end of the completion. Note the space at the end of the completion. That makes sense. When you press tab, you expect for the shell to complete the command, and you expect to start typing the argument to the command. We recommend using a library like readline for your implementation. Most modern shells and repos, like the Python repo, use readline under the hood. While you may need to override some of its default behaviors, it's typically less work than starting from scratch. Different shells handle autocompletion differently. For consistency, we recommend using Bash for development and testing. Yeah. So one thing I really honestly don't understand is the documentation for Bash is so verbose, and it is just, there are so many branches and so many implementation details, and it's not simple at all. And if I wanted to do something complex, I would just use an actual programming language as opposed to Bash. And I do understand that shell scripting languages give you a lot of power in that you can do a lot of system modification by calling commands and stringing commands together. However, I just wish that Bash was kept simple. And I really wonder how people are able to process all of this information, all the information in the documentation of Bash, because it seems like it's too complicated. It's simply not. Okay, so for example, yeah, you have so many different options and different arguments, and for something as simple as a POSIX shell. Yeah, I think this is ridiculous, honestly. Okay, back to the task though. It's something that I don't understand, but I hope to understand at some point. I want to actually talk to the people that work on this to understand what their mental models are to for these things, because I can't. They can't all be wrong. For example, I've seen very complicated man pages for anything related to the internet, and I've like just wondered with no examples and just very with no examples and just very arbitrary set of functions and arguments and sparse information, how one even like has an understanding of these things, right? But then if I've seen a lot of man pages are like that, so I assume that there is something that I'm missing, and that is something that I would actually like to learn. But I don't know whether I'm right or wrong, which is kind of annoying. And anyway, so interesting. So auto-completing echo doesn't insert ZSH doesn't insert a space. But does bash do that? Oh, bash does that. Interesting. Cool. I'm just going to use ZSH. Another weird thing is that macOS uses ZSH, and I just don't understand why. I don't know. I think shells are more complicated than they need to be. That's an outsider's perspective. But I'm really interested in knowing what the mental models are for these of these people that are building these things. It's just incredible. If they're actually able to hold all that information in their head in a cohesive way, it means that they're onto something. Cool. So how do I implement this for built-ins? So one of the things I've got to understand is how I can work with the input function and the pressing of the tab key. That's one thing that I've got to work with. So let me formalize my thoughts. I'm using the input function in Python to read user input. However, when a user presses the tab key on the keyboard, I want to replace the input thus far. I want to replace the input thus far. So here I'm going to need to insert a kind of hook into the input function. That's the mental picture I have of this. Does input provide the facility to insert such a callback hook? So I think I want to first ask uh, DuckDuckGo actually. So let's do that. Let's ask DuckDuckGo. Official documentation. Okay. So this is interesting. So input itself seems to be very simple, and so but if the readline uh, module is imported, it seems to use readline, and readline seems to be a GNU system call or a GNU implementation or a library that offers a very rich way to read input and uh, additional things. So I think that we can maybe do this. The following functions relate to implementing a custom word completion function. This is typically operated by the tab key and can suggest and automatically complete a word being typed. By default, readline is set up to be used by RL completer to complete Python identifiers for the interactive. For the interactive interpreter. If the readline module is to be used with a custom completer, a different set of word delimiters should be set. Okay. Readline.setCompleter function. Set or remove the completer function if function is unspecified. If function is specified, it will be used as the new completer function. If omitted or none, any completer function already installed is removed. The completer function is called as function, and it takes in the arguments text, comma, state, where state is 0, 1, 2, and so on until it returns a non-string value. It should return the next possible completion starting with text. Then the installed completer function is invoked by the entry func callback passed to RL underscore completion underscore matches in the underlying library. The text string comes from the first parameter the RL attempted completion function callback of the underlying library. Yeah, this seems kind of complicated. One of the reasons this feels complicated to me is because we're importing a module, and that module kind of in the background does a bunch of things, and it's used by, it seems to be used by input. And that's just very confusing to me, and it seems to be, there seems to be a lot of things happening behind the scenes that I don't have a mental model for. So I think this makes somewhat sense. I can call setCompleter. I'm not sure what state is, however. For state in 0, 1, 2, until it returns a non-string value. So I don't know what state is. Perhaps it's documented on the top. This is pretty interesting. Until it returns a non-string value, I would assume that the callback function returns a string value because that's what I want to replace the currently typed string with. It should return the next possible completion starting with text. And I assume that if I have just had E so far and I press tab, I'm just going to return E, and I only return echo and exit when the current input is ECH and EXI. Right. Yeah, so this is exactly the kind of thing that makes me uneasy because I'm not sure how exactly to process all this information. In the sense that, actually, let me just try to make sense of it by writing down different things that are on my mind. So one of the things that's on my mind is readline. I'm not sure how exactly readline works. Readline works in the background. Readline works in the background. and I don't have a model for how it works. And so the reason I think it is important to have a mental model for how readline works is because I've worked on Go projects before where I believe there are similar things where we import something and that importing thing sets something. Again, it's like a very vague memory, but that sets the kind of state of another library. And I remember having a mental model of that. But here, since it's Python, it's a language that I'm not particularly familiar with. It seems different. It seems confusing. Anyway, and I'm also not sure how GNU readline and the readline module are interrelated. Readline, and so I'm not sure whether I should look that up. But so readline is a GNU program. Okay, so I think the gist of it is readline is a GNU program that allows you to read input and in a very utilitarian way, offering many functionalities. So yeah, so one thing is, so readline works in the background, and the other is the readline module itself seems to be tied to the GNU readline. Readline seems to itself use GNU readline under the hood. GNU readline under the hood. And that adds a layer of mental complexity, at least personally. And then we have the documentation itself, the documentation for readline itself, setting the callback function that is invoked when the tab key is pressed. I don't know what state is. Documentation itself. Okay, so I think I can actually ignore the first two and kind of work with the third one. I think on a high level, I have a 5% understanding of how it works, and so I'm okay with that. And in the future, if I come across this again, I might look into, yeah, I think it's important to be aware of these things, but not necessarily know these things entirely in their entirety. So I'm gonna try to move on and use pieces of information that I know already. So I know that if readline is imported, input uses readline under the hood, and here I can set a custom completer, and I'm not sure what the delimiter is. Until it returns a non-string. Yes, that's weird. So why would the completer function return a non-string? So it can either be none, in which case all the completers are removed. It should return the next possible completion starting with text. Okay. Yeah, so this is something that I don't understand. What exactly delimiter is? So I know that in a CSV, delimiter is what separates column names and values. Delimiter, and delimiter is what separates one thing from another thing. Set or get word delimiters for completion. What does that mean? Do I need to set this? But let's look at examples here. So here it seems to be used for something other than autocomplete. Import ATExit, OS, import readline, hist file equals, sure, Python history. Okay. I have no idea why history is even related to readline. I mean, sure, things from readline can be put into history, but oh, maybe this is the file that readline automatically writes to. And at exit register, so I assume that this is what's called. You're going to pass hist file to it. So it's going to write this, whatever was input. Cool. Yeah, it's I don't have a mental model for this since it's the first time I'm seeing this. It's not familiar, but sure. Okay. So let's just write the completer function. So notice the space at the end. But otherwise, if there's a tab, I just return text itself. And I'm not going to be using this state because I have no idea what the state is. Where is it documented? Gosh. Until it returns, a completer function is called as for state 0, 1, 2. Sure. This is the current iteration until it returns a non-string value. Until? Right, so the moment it returns a non-string value, it's... I don't know what state is. As far as I can tell, this is badly documented. I could be wrong though. I am probably wrong and I'm missing something here, but let's just do this. Let's just say reline dot set completer autocomplete. That's all. And I probably need to learn what the definition of delimiter is and learn its pronunciation. Is it delimiter, delimiter? I don't know. Cool. So Python 3 app main.py. Oh, okay. Oh wow. I know. Interesting. So even though I set the completer, it doesn't seem to work. And if the readline module is loaded, we'll use it to provide elaborate line editing and history features. Yeah, these are legal states. These are very different. What I'm looking for. So we have manipulating history, bare essentials, bindable readline commands, commands for changing text, there we go. Delete char. Interesting. So it seems to be lower level, and readline seems to be on top of that. The readline Python module seems to be on top of that. On macOS, the readline module, which library is the configuration. Okay, interesting. So macOS might use a different program in order to offer the functionality that readline gives. Which is interesting. So set or remove the completer function. It will be used as the new completer. Okay, any completer function will be removed. Let's actually write. So this is actually not being called. So I think there is possibly something wrong with, pretty sure, input. Yeah, so this is the only location where I'm calling input. And input uses the readline module under the hood. And I am setting the completer. And let me print function autocomplete, so and so. Okay. Well, in that case, why isn't the autocomplete being called? I think that's because I need to set the delimiter. Get completer. There's a space, there's another space, there seems to be a tab, and I don't know what that is, perhaps a new line character. Delimiter. So what on earth is a delimiter? So can I just set it to set the word delimiters for completion. Let's do that. So here, I'm going to print a tab. Okay, let's not say tab. Yeah. Yeah, I think I need to take a break here. I think I've made some progress in understanding how exactly things work. I think I'm happy that I'm trying to read the library instead of relying on AI for it. Instead of relying on the AI to just give me the idiomatic way to set the completer function in Python for the input function. So I think it's good that I'm trying to read the documentation, and I think that's going to help. And I'm glad that I formalized my two concerns in relation to the readline library, where I have both of these concerns, and I consciously decided to move on and make use of the functionality it provides, and keep this as a reference for if I ever need it in the future. So I feel like the documentation is really bad, but I really can't tell if I'm missing something or if the documentation is indeed bad. But one thing I do know is that readline is indeed being called, because if I comment this out, so I noticed that when I press Control P and Control N, it takes me back to the previous and next commands within the input prompt. So for example, if I don't import the readline library, for example, let's just, so Control P, echo, hello, there. So Control P takes me back through my commands here, which is awesome. But now that I've modified it not to use readline, echo, hello, Control P outputs gibberish on the screen in the input area. So I know that it's likely that the input function is using the readline module in order to read input. However, I have no idea why the autocomplete does not work. Okay, let's take a 10-minute break and come back to this. Okay, I think we can continue. So, yeah, let's have a plan for this. How do I, so the goal here is to complete the echo exit stage of the autocomplete module, and with a reasonable degree of understanding, whatever reasonable is for me, of the underlying code. So I think I first wanna understand what state is. Uh, so okay, so first I want to set the trigger to autocomplete, the trigger that the trigger of autocomplete, and I think it's delimiter. Okay, so first I think let's understand what delimiter is. So a delimiter or delimiter, let me look that up. Okay, definitionally, it's a character or a sequence of characters used to indicate the boundary between separate elements in data. Oh, cool. Yeah, so my understanding was correct. Let's look at the pronunciation. Merriam-Webster dictionary. Wow, have I lost internet? Okay, I'm gonna try to connect to my iPhone.
Delimiter.
It's delimiter, but it also seems to be delimiter. I think it can be either delimiter or delimiter. Okay, a character that marks the beginning or end of a unit of data. Okay, I really like that definition. A unit of data. I think that's a great definition. That's a great way to think of. That's a great word term to describe it. Okay, so I think the reason why there is okay. So I think so. Basically, so tab only completes up to the delimiter, and auto completes only up to the delimiter. I think that's how it works, and I'm like, yeah, I'm comfortable with that interpretation. Oh, so I've got to set delimiters, and so I think any kind of white space, tab, white space, new line, of course. And I think every character is set the word delimiters for completion, and we have the semicolon. Yeah, I think this should do for now. But these functions access the RL completer word break characters variable in the underlying library. Okay, so I think I need to ask the AI what state is. What is the state input parameter in readline.setCompleter? Oh, interesting. A string representing the completion for that state, or none when there are no more Oh, interesting. Cool. So my understanding here is if text equals ECH, no, but the autocomplete function is not being called in the first place. If state is 0, otherwise return none. Okay, return echo if state equals 0, else none. That's the ternary operator. Interesting. So is tap the only trigger? This is typically operated by default is set to be. Okay, let's look at RL completer, which Okay. So this is very confusing. So it seems like on Mac OS, Python, the readline module uses libedit under the hood instead of GNU readline. And I think that's because Mac OS is moving away from GNU. That's the reason why Mac OS no longer ships with Bash as its default terminal and instead ships with ZSH. Again, so this is a very surface level understanding. So it uses libedit. And so for libedit, I need to use this particular binding, which is different. And the configuration here is different than that is used, which is used by GNU readline. Okay, and so that doesn't seem to be documented by the readline manual documentation. And I think it should actually work. So one behavior I actually don't understand is oops. So when I do H and I press tab multiple times, it seems to print this multiple times. Let's exit. Okay. Oh, I think so. The delimiter here should also be. All right, I don't know, but yeah, I think I've got it working to some extent, and that's okay. But this is not going to be executed. The binding, okay. Cool. So if anyone is building this with Python and is using the readline module on Mac OS, the binding syntax is different and causes issues in other OSs. Yeah, so I think on Linux, which is what the auto graders use here, you need to use tab : complete. I was stuck for a bit since my changes caused previous tests to fail due to this issue. So see the Stack Overflow answer for more detail and a workaround. Okay. Right, so I think this is something that I also read here. Great, so if the backend is edit line, then I'm going to have to So I hope the version of Python is greater than or equal to 3.13. And another thing is I have no idea of how the program and RL complete and all of these are integrated. It just seems too complicated. It feels unnecessary to learn at this point, and it just seems necessary to know, but not know entirely. So, yeah, this is a great workaround. So if readline.backend equals edit line, then this, otherwise, else readline.parse and finds tab complete. Oh, shoot. Okay, this is okay. Okay, great. I think let's uncomment. Let's comment that out. So yeah, so that's one of the things I don't understand. So when I type H and I press tab multiple times, why does the H show up on the other line? It makes that seems confusing to me. Okay, so this test passes, which is good. So that's one thing I don't understand, the H thing, where it shows up on the different line. I wonder what that's about. Okay, let's start off with the next stage, completion with arguments. In this stage, you'll, what? So maybe my implementation also covers this, but let me read what this is. Anyway, you'll extend your shell's tab completion to handle commands with arguments. Your shell should now not only complete the command itself, but also correctly handle the subsequent arguments that the user types. This means that after completing the command with the tab, it should allow the user to continue typing arguments, and those arguments should also be interpreted correctly. You'll need to ensure commands like echo and type autocomplete and still function correctly with arguments. The test will simulate user input with tab presses and will execute built-in commands similar to the previous stage with added arguments. Input, ECH, tab, hello, enter. The tester expects the shell to first complete after tab and then accept the hello argument. And after the enter key press, execute echo hello. Why is this a different use case? Because yeah, so I can't think of an implementation that autocompletes echo ec to echo and does not accept any arguments after echo. Why would anyone build such a thing? Why is this another task? Because if the only thing your tab does is allow you to autocomplete, because here, if you look at the instruction, the prompt displays echo, which means that you're not actually running echo. And there is a space here. Yeah, I have no idea what this is. Why is this another why is this another stage? Okay, I'm just going to proceed to the next step. So I assume that not using the readline library perhaps leads to situations where this case is explicitly needed. Yeah, let's do this. In this stage, you'll refine your shell's tab completion behavior to handle cases where the user types an invalid command. When the user types a command that is not known, your shell should not attempt to autocomplete. Instead, it should just keep what the user typed and ring a bell. Okay, so I do hear the bell. However, I'm wondering why it's moving on to the next line. Oh, that's because of the print here. So for some reason, changing the end character to not be the new line does no longer rings the bell. And I wonder why. Oh wow, okay. Okay, I'm just like hacking around here, and that's not the right way to do it. Yeah, it's not fun either, but it's very tempting to to just get it working. But I'm gonna choose long-term growth over just getting it working, for sure. Yeah, so this is confusing. I don't fully understand this. Um, so why does ending this not work? So age, that works. Print, so this works, but right. So I think what's happening here is this is interfering somehow with. So so this print here, it's supposed to print to the standard output. And I think there are considerations related to whether we actually want to print to the standard output or we want to use the abstraction method write out we wrote earlier, but that's for redirection. But Yeah, I honestly just want to think about this later. I want to think about whatever I processed, more specifically the read line, library, GNU, edit line, how it's integrated with the Python readline function, with the readline module, delimiter, and the bell character. So I'll get to this later. Although I don't like to leave it here. I genuinely think just giving it some time, just giving my brain some time to think about these things in an unstructured way, it's gonna feel good. It's at the very least. So we'll complete autocomplete. We'll complete autocompletion next time. All right. Well, I'll stop the recording here. Thanks.